The views and opinions expressed in The Fact Is with Hollis Grant are those of Hollis Grant and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Droids Canada Network. Droids Canada Network does not take responsibility for any content or position produced by Hollis Grant and his show. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant. Now that in Canada, the children have gone back to school and the March break was over, I hope that everyone listening, for wherever you are in the world, had a wonderful March break. If your kids did not have any time off from March break, then this statement means nothing to you. Now, on today's episode, we're focusing on the Canadian issue. We've talked about this on our past episodes, droidscanada.com. Go back to listen to all of our past episodes. But what we're focusing on today is on the election scandal, the Chinese interference. Now, if you're elsewhere in the world, you are aware of so much news. You have the indictment of Donald Trump, a topic that we would like to get to. We have the farm protests in Europe. We have the election results from the Netherlands, where the Farmers' Party came out of nowhere to claim 17 seats and form government. And this is the anti-green, if we want to use the word anti, the non-environmentalist, the non-World Economic Forum voters, the regular people. We have the president of Ukraine touring the world asking for more and more money from more people. Keep in mind, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in all of Europe. He's recently hosted the Prime Minister of Japan, recently went there, and he was out begging for more money throughout the world. But we are going to come back and deal with this Canadian issue because this is almost getting swept under the news cycle. It's not a big deal. However, the allegations are a big deal. We have an elected MP that received money from China, or the allegations. Multiple MPs receiving money from China. Not Chinese citizens, actual government. And that's where the problem is. These, or the Liberal Party, accepted funds from a foreign government to help with an election. And that's where the argument is of the election issues. So, as recently we talked about on the show, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau created the special rapporteur position, which is to investigate. It was later announced, and that was last week, that he decided that he would elect the former Governor General, the highest position to hold in Canadian government. It's a figurehead position now. It's the representative of the monarch, so the king's voice. And as a bill goes through the House of Commons, passes through the House of Commons, goes to the Senate for its vote, and goes into law, the final step is to have it signed by the Governor General, and then it's issued into law, meaning that it's the representative of the king at that point. And that, of course, all happened when Canada had its official separation in 1984 under Pierre Elliott Trudeau and his changes to the way bills passes and our separation in terms of Canadian independence from the crown. But it's nice that he was elected. Now, this rapporteur was appointed to become Governor General by the Conservative, and that at that time was Prime Minister Stephen Harper. So a Conservative, and that's fine, putting in a long-time Liberal into this position. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that shows that there's fairness across all parties, and that the work of a Canadian isn't held to the political party that they belong to. That being said, Justin Trudeau has decided to make a Liberal accountable and to look into the investigations. But it doesn't stop there. See, the special rapporteur was on state visits with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, met with Xi Jinping, the president or the emperor of China, is a neighbor to Justin Trudeau. And if that doesn't bother you, and if you can look past that and say, well, that person could be independent and really critique that, I will say that the former Governor General sits on the board of directors of the Trudeau Foundation. The Trudeau Foundation is the foundation named after Pierre Elliott Trudeau, where Justin gets his family fortune from. So he looks after the business, the investments, and the foundation for the Prime Minister. Would you agree that that is a conflict of interest, or can you look past that and say, no, this individual can objectively look through and there's no problems with that? A family friend investigating how the Prime Minister acted and all the correspondence will go through it and give an objective opinion to that. Now, there's an individual in the PMO's office, which is the Prime Minister's office, and her name is Katie Telford. She is the chief of staff. She is not an elected official hired by the Prime Minister, and she essentially controls access to the Prime Minister. She has been mentioned in numerous scandals, never has answered questions to the media, and does not have to, has never been brought before a committee until now. I'm going to take a look here at a CBC article, the Communist Broadcasting Corporation of Canada, and there's some very interesting comments that are in here, but we'll go through this together. And the article is Trudeau's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, to testify at committee probing Chinese government interference. Conservative motion calling on Telford to testify before another committee was defeated. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Chief of Staff, has agreed to testify before one of the committees investigating the extent of the Chinese government's interference in Canada's elections and what the Liberal government knew about it. While there are serious constraints on what can be said in public about sensitive intelligence matters in an effort to make Parliament work, Katie Telford has agreed to appear at the Procedure and House Affairs Committee as part of their study, says a Tuesday statement from the Prime Minister's office. The decision clears a logjam at the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, where Liberal MPs have been filibustering, which is delaying, over the past 2 weeks to stall a vote on calling Telford to appear. The committee resumed Tuesday morning and voted to call Telford to appear for 2 hours between April 3rd and April 14th. Committee member and Conservative MP Michael Cooper, who first floated the motion, said that while Liberal MPs should answer for their actions in obstructing the committee, he's pleased with Tuesday's decision. It is critical that she testifies. She's the second most powerful person in this government, arguably. But not only that, she played an integral role in the 2019 and 2021 election campaigns on behalf of the Liberal Party, he said. She is a crucial witness to get to the heart of the scandal, which is what did the Prime Minister know, and did he know about it, and what did he do or fail to do about Beijing's interference in our elections? Liberal MP Craig Fergus said he wasn't willing to call her to testify, but Telford volunteered. It allows us to move on to other businesses, he said. The tradition is to not have political staff come before committees. It should be ministers who are readily or really responsible for this. It makes a lot of sense. It's been a long-standing tradition of the House and one that should be broken with great hesitation. Now, that statement is incorrect because we can go to the Twitter rantings of Jerry Butts. Jerry Butts used to work for the Trudeau PMO's office, but he had to resign amidst, shockingly, a Liberal scandal. His particular scandal was the S&C Lavalin scandal, and he stepped down and it was swept under the rug. Now, that one was allegations over contracts that were favored to S&C Lavalin. There was allegations of Muammar Gaddafi's son, which was the former dictator of Libya, coming to Canada, uh, being supplied with cocaine and hookers over contracts in Libya. There was no formal investigation. And since then, Jerry Butts, who still remains very close friends with the Prime Minister, as they, after all, went to college together, but still is very active on Twitter and was ranting. Uh, GM Butts is the Twitter handle, was ranting about having Telford testify or speak, calling everyone it's ridiculous and she shouldn't be up there and she has nothing to do with it. And this is just conservatives going out for after a witch hunt, and it's nonsense. Now, what they report to media is a completely different spin to it. She was forced to testify, and now they're saying, oh, she willfully is testifying. They obviously don't want someone to testify, and it's not obviously a good thing. Jerry Butts decided to throw himself on the sword and retire rather than face questions. However, Katie Telford does not want to commit political suicide and would rather just continue on and answer those questions and seeing what will happen. Nonetheless, back to the article. The approved motion also invites the national campaign directors for the Liberal and Conservative parties during the 2019 and 2021 federal election campaigns to testify. It extends the invitation to Jenny Byrne, advisor to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, and Tusha Michaud, chief of staff to the former leader Aaron O'Toole, or Aaron the Tool O'Toole. He was the Conservative that, while running for the leadership of the Conservatives, went on to say that if he was elected leader of the Conservatives and to represent Conservatives to run for Prime Minister, if he was the leader, he would get rid of the carbon tax. And a day after he made that statement, they had their elections and he won the leadership. He was asked again about the carbon tax and said, no, I'm not getting rid of it. I'm keeping it. And with that coming out of the gate and going to the elections, it was no wonder that the Conservatives lost. I've said this, it was the Conservatives' elections to lose, along as the former leader before Aaron O'Toole, which was Andrew Scheer, who never came across aggressive, never questioned, and always had a really bizarre smile on his face. And again, it was their election to lose in 2019. Public and political interest in foreign election interference has intensified since the Globe and Mail alleged that China tried to ensure that the Liberals won a minority government in the last general election. The newspaper also published reports saying Beijing worked to defeat conservative candidates who were critical of China. Back in the fall, Global News reported that intelligence officials warned Trudeau that China's consulate in Toronto floated cash to at least 11 federal election candidates and numerous Beijing operatives who worked as campaign staffers. Trudeau has said repeatedly he was never briefed about federal candidates receiving money from China. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS, calls foreign interference activities by the Chinese government the greatest strategic threat to national security. An independent panel tasked with overseeing the 2021 election did detect attempts at interference, but concluded that foreign meddling did not affect the outcome. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh took credit for Telfer's decision to appear on Tuesday. Earlier in the day, Singh said his party would back the Conservatives in passing a motion compelling her to appear before another parliamentary committee, the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, if the government didn't stop filibustering in committee. The PMO announced Telfer's appearance not long after. I forced the government and I made it clear, really clear, today they had a choice. They could stop the obstruction in committee, allow the witness to testify, or we would support the motion, Singh told reporters Tuesday. His party had a confidence and supply agreement with Trudeau's Liberals minority government. Essentially, good old Jagmeet Singh, and we have done episodes on good old Jagmeet, but his recent tweet about the civil turmoil in the Khalistan state in India. It's a priceless Twitter tirade that he went on, where he was very concerned about the Sikh community after their terrorist attacks and riots, and he was very concerned that there was curfews in place and that the internet all of a sudden had no access and it was being censored, kind of like the Bill C-11 that's being put through about censorship in the internet, or with the recent lockdowns in Canada, which he was very quiet about. See, we've talked about this on the show, and Mr. Singh has no loyalty to Canada because he doesn't care about Canadians. He clearly cares about himself, because if his statement was, I forced the government and I made it clear that he's the only one that can save Canada. Not his party, nothing else. And it was him that he'll take credit. We'll also point out that Mr. Singh is the one that's supporting the government, because in the event that a bill does not pass, it's tradition that the minority government calls it quits and they start a new election process. And the way that the total number of seats in the House are divided, the majority, or how he holds that minority government, is that the Liberal seats and the NDP seats together combined are more numerous in number than the opposition, in this case the Conservatives. So that's where they say the term holding the balance of power. The combined total of seats or elected officials of NDP and Liberals is more than the Conservatives, so he is supporting the government. But he supported the government through multiple scandals and is taking credit for something that he shouldn't be taking credit for. The Conservative motion was defeated in the House of Commons Tuesday by a vote of 177 to 145. NDP MPs voted on the side of the Liberals, so therefore no collapse in government. They were booed by the Conservative bench. Speaking to journalists after the vote, Conservative MP Andrew Scheer took a swing at Jagmeet Singh. I've served with several NDP leaders. I've served in the House with Jack Layton, Ed Broadbent, and Alexa McDonough, and Thomas Mulcair. I've never seen an NDP leader like this, selling out long-standing principles that party used to stand for in exchange for who knows what, he said. A former Conservative leader went on to lambaste the government for staging what he called a theatrical display at a committee before climbing down and agreeing to let Telford testify. Now, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is expecting a gold star for exhausting every attempt to delay and block Ms. Telford from testifying, he said. None of this takes away from the urgent need for a full independent public inquiry. Singh said he'll also still push for a public inquiry into the allegations of election interference. I've said clearly, both publicly and privately, that we need a public inquiry and we need questions answered in the meantime, said Singh. Absent a public inquiry process, the only process that we have is the committee work. The Liberals floated, making the vote on Telford motion a confidence matter, but Trudeau shut that down, pushing off speculation about an early election for the time being. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister's office also released the mandate for the former Governor-General David Johnson's position as independent special rapporteur on foreign interference. The terms of reference say Johnson will report regularly to the Prime Minister and must make a decision on whether the government should call a public inquiry by May 23rd, 2023. The PMO says the Prime Minister expects Johnson to complete his review by October 31st, 2023. The Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois have pushed against Johnson's appointment, arguing that he is too closely linked with the Prime Minister. Trudeau has shot back, accusing Poilievre of attacking Canada's institutions with a flamethrower. We'll point out again, if we are to go to the Trudeau Foundation, and if you have access to a computer, a cell phone, whatever you're listening to this podcast on, and if you want to follow along as we clearly just type this out, and we can go right now and take a look at the website www.trudeaufoundation.com. Yes, it's 3 W's, not 2. And if we go into the Trudeau Foundation, we're going to see this wonderful page of a bunch of people walking. And we can go to the foundation itself. It's on the top. And right on the top, it will say the network committee. And there's a list to the board of directors. But don't worry. Only a few days ago, in preparation for this episode, and last week, before the 22nd of March, while preparing for this show, David Johnson was listed on the board of directors, and as such, the website has now been updated with him removed. But to go back, to clarify, after he stepped down as Governor General, he joined the board of directors for the Trudeau Foundation. This will be the independent person that will be reviewing to see if the Liberal government had any wrongdoing, or that Justin Trudeau did any wrongdoing and knew, or how much did he know about the donations and money that was funneled in to Liberal candidates from the Communist Party of China, and will be presenting that to the Canadian public, and not a public inquiry. We'll be following this particular story because it's about to get very, very interesting. There's going to be a lot of I don't recall, very vague answers, but we'll try and break it down for you and condense it so you don't have to waste your time listening to 8-hour committee meetings. I'd like to thank you for tuning in this week to The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and I hope for wherever you are listening in the world that you have a terrific week. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Hollis Grant, host of The Fact Is. You can find us Wednesdays on droidscanada.com, where we discuss current affairs from around the world.